Hey everyone, welcome to Pascov Online Wednesday Reflection. It's Pastor Steve here, and I'm so glad to have you join us this morning. This is the week after Easter, and I just wanted to share a couple reflections of what this past year has been, and especially what is it like to live after Easter? What's life after Resurrection Sunday? You know, oftentimes, as we talked about on Sunday, we think when we say he is risen and we declare the resurrection of Jesus Christ, it comes with this great proclamation and with much gusto. And we say, this is who our God is. And there's this power behind it and joy. And that's great. And that should be there because Christ has risen from the dead. He has broken out of the grips of death, that God the Father is indeed faithful. That's what we've been talking about this whole Sunday, this past Sunday. But something happens the week after that actually points to a different type of experience for the disciples. You see, all that counts afterwards, the week after, comes with a lot of confusion. There is a wondering that the tomb is empty, and yet they haven't seen Christ. And they're scratching their head. They're wondering, was he stolen? Was he taken away? What happened? What do we do between an empty tomb and a risen Christ? What do we do when we experience deep sadness and sorrow, but we have not yet experienced the presence of the power of Jesus in our lives yet? And I wanted to give us a little roadmap of what it would be like for us to continue to journey with Jesus till we experience his resurrection power within us. It comes out of the story in John 20, where John continues this arc of following Mary and Martha and Lazarus and the journey that they've taken. And I love how John's so focused on it because it allows us to have a deeper dive into a couple of people's stories of which we can follow. And this follows in John 20, Mary Magdalene, who went to the grave to visit the tomb and saw that the stone had been removed. And she looked inside and the tomb was empty. And so she runs to the disciples and says, they've taken him, and runs back. And some of the disciples run back and they see the empty tomb and they're scratching their head and they're wondering what happened. But Mary stays and she's weeping and weeping. You see, that's the first thing that happens. When we come to the tomb, whatever tomb it may be this past year, whatever sense of deep loss that you've experienced, it's a loss of friendship, a loss of connection, a loss of community, a loss of a job, a loss of a loved one physically, a loss of your own sense of self-worth or identity, whatever the case may be. You stand at the gravesite of it, and you wonder, God, where have you been? And that's where we see Mary in verse 11, standing outside the tomb crying. And as she wept, she bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and other at the foot. And they asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize it was Jesus. You know, sometimes when we are in our deepest sadness, Jesus is right next to us, but we don't realize that he's there. Sometimes we just are so consumed with our grief. And now we can say, well, shame on her or shame on us. We should feel bad for not noticing Jesus. But the story, I believe, is trying to tell us that in the midst of our deepest grief, Jesus really is there. Jesus is standing next to us. He comes to us in our deepest grief, and he's present. He is present with you. It goes on to say, Jesus asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it that you're looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." The next piece, after Jesus being present with us in our deepest grief and allowing our sadness to be present, is that Jesus wants us to name what that is. Jesus wants to draw out our deepest sadness so that we can actually name it. Many times in our world, we're asked to cry it out. We're expected to have this cathartic experience and then wipe the snot off our nose and wash our face and just like tough it out from there on out. You don't need to acknowledge your loss anymore. You've moved on. And Jesus here is saying, no, a sadness not consoled will sit with you and fester in you. You need to speak it out. Jesus already knows. Psalm 139 talks about a God knowing the words on our lips before it is even said. But Jesus knows that we need to be able to speak it out. We need to identify the deepest pains. What is it that we're crying about? Who is it that we're looking for? Spend some time this week, today, identifying where the deepest pains you're experiencing are right now and asking the question, what am I crying about? Why am I so troubled here? Who am I looking for? And lastly, continues by saying that Jesus said to her, Mary. Jesus says her name. And she turned toward him and cried out in Aramaic, Rabboni, which means teacher. And Jesus says, do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. After Jesus is present with us, after he allows us and encourages us, draws out our deepest sadness, he says our name. He tells us and reminds us who we are. When we cover up our grief, when we disregard what our loss is, we cover up a part of our own identity, a part of who made us, what made us who we are. Because we're saying we are not hurt by this thing when we indeed are. And what Jesus does is he opens up that deepest sadness so that we can identify and say, yes, we are a person that has lost. We are a person that has been wounded, and yet we have our being. Jesus knows my name. Jesus knows your name, who you are. And in that, he allows us in our deepest losses to recover who we are. And that's not all. Sisters and brothers, he says, do not cling on to me. I have not yet ascended to the Father. I am actually sending you to somebody that needs to hear this. My hope for us is that when we recover a sense of who we are, we get to go to other people and say, I felt sad. I experienced my loss. And I heard my name, called by God Most High. I have experienced the resurrection in this gravesite. And perhaps they may experience my Father, which is your Father, my God, which is your God. My hope for you today, as you listen to this or watch this, is to spend some time examining your own losses. Where have you yet met Jesus? Perhaps you need to weep and find Jesus there. Perhaps you need to draw out your deepest sadness and hear Jesus call your name. Or perhaps There are people that Jesus is sending you to tell them what you've experienced. May this week be a week where we experience the presence of the resurrected Christ in every part of our lives. May others experience it too. Sisters and brothers, we are in a world that needs Jesus. Let us be those who share him. Have a good week. Have a blessed week. Have a Christ-filled week. Before you, behind you, above you, below you, inside and out. And I'll see you on Sunday.